Slide. Great. So welcome to our webinar, Building a Brand for PrEP, Positioning PrEP in the Hearts and Minds of Young People. I'm Emily Donaldson. I lead our demand generation and marketing efforts on the MOSAIC project, and we'll be kicking us off. We have a really great lineup of speakers for you today, but we'll start our time together by going over session objectives, some background to today's presentations, our agenda, and I'll introduce you to our speakers. Next slide. Today, we're going to learn both why evidence-informed, youth-centric branding is important for reaching youth populations with PrEP, and also how to reach youth populations through building evidence-informed, youth-centric brands. Next slide. But let's take a quick step back and just set the stage for our time today. Some of you saw brand in the title of our webinar and probably thought logos. Others I know are seasoned marketers with us today. I see some of those names in the chat. So let's get on the same page though before we start. Branding is much more than logos or color palettes, although you'll hear today how those visual aspects are all critical assets of a brand. Branding is actually about understanding your audience's emotions and needs from your product or service on a deep level so that through your brand, you can create an experience and an emotional connection with your audience. Brands are for products, services, health behaviors, and categories of products like PrEP. And branding can be a public health tool by creating an association or belief with a product or service that can then influence behavior. And you'll hear today from our speakers how branding is being used in the PrEP space as a public health tool. Next slide. Why is branding important to us? Well, a strong brand can help our demand generation programs better connect with their intended audience. Without a brand, your audience really won't notice, internalize, remember, or most importantly, act on the message you're trying to relay. And brands can make our demand generation efforts distinctive, consistent, easy to understand, and resonant with our audiences. Next slide. And why is branding important for PrEP? So we now have new PrEP products entering the market and a category of PrEP, and we need to do something differently to make sure we drive demand for the PrEP category in a strategic way. In other words, if we don't get the people we need to reach interested and in the clinic door, we can't get them to take up new products. And you'll hear today from our speakers about the importance of demand generation being both evidence-informed and applying a user-centered approach by engaging with young people in a meaningful and continuous way from the start in order to be effective. We also know youth populations especially are very rapidly changing. We can't do the same thing over and over and expect it to be resonant and relevant to them. We need to really learn from young people about how to reach them. And now that we have multiple PrEP products, a pill, a ring, and an injectable, we need to know how to communicate from a category perspective, which is different than from a single product lens. Next slide. And branding is all about strategy. For our demand generation efforts to be successful, they need to be guided by robust strategy, which starts with developing a brand positioning strategy, brand guidelines, and campaign strategy. And that leads to focused creative and campaign implementation. And you'll hear more about what a strategic approach entails and how this translates to creative execution and campaign implementation from our speakers. Next slide. Today, we're going to walk through each step of branding. We'll start with the first step of brand positioning, and Anelda Ref and Mercini Bishopp will tell you how our MOSAIC team developed an evidence-informed, youth-driven positioning strategy based on a private sector approach. Then they will take you through the next step, brand guidelines based on the positioning. Sarah Piat will go through one of the best-known brands in our field, MTV's Staying Alive Foundation, and the creative they've developed for HIV and PrEP campaigns. And Elmarie Breedenhan will bring us to implementation and talk about how her team at Fitz RHI brings branding alive and puts campaigns into action, and how strategy and partnerships are the backbone of her work. We'll then end our time together with a Q&A, so please pop your questions into the chat as we go through today's session. Next slide. And just a little bit about our fantastic lineup of speakers today. So Anelda is the co-founder and chief content officer for Two Stories, a woman-led agency in South Africa, and the founder of She Says in Cape Town, which is the largest network of women in creative industries. Mercy is a Kenyan youth advocate and president of the Nairobi Youth Advisory Council, and currently an adolescents and young people liaison officer at LVCT Health, and Next Gen Squad representative on the MOSAIC project. Next slide. Sarah is Managing Director and Deputy Executive Director of the MTV Staying Alive Foundation, responsible for programs and operations, having joined the foundation in 2003. And Elmarie is the Technical Head of Program Engagement at Fitz IRHI and leads the Innovation for Health team as part of the Implementation Science Department. Next slide. And Casey Bishop will be our moderator for our Q&A today. Casey is an integral part of MOSAIC and our marketing and demand generation team. And again, I lead our marketing and demand gen work at the MOSAIC project and love all things branding. So I'm really thrilled we have the opportunity to share all of this work with you. And I will now turn it over to our first presenter, Nelda. Nelda, don't forget to come off mute.
Thank you, Emily. Hi, everyone. As you've heard, MOSAIC has set out to build a strong, unified brand for the category, a brand that's designed to shape marketing and demand generation efforts so that all communications are aligned under a common strategy, built on robust evidence and a deep understanding of what young women's relationship with PrEP. We know young women are living in an increasingly connected world, and we believe in the importance of having one brand for the PrEP category. Similar to a master brand, it is one that can be adopted based on the context and needs of different countries and settings. So today, Mercy and I are going to take you through a high-level view of the process to develop the brand positioning strategy and how we pulled it through to develop brand guidelines. Next slide, please. You might be wondering, what is brand positioning and why are we talking about it? Well, we don't always start from this point when developing communication, but hopefully after today, you'll understand why it's a critical step in developing a true understanding of our audience and how we can create more effective communication by starting with such a strategy. Positioning is really the science behind the creative elements that consumers ultimately encounter. It's an internal process that is not audience-facing. It's the North Star for teams as they plan marketing and demand generation efforts and provides guidance for how to tell the PrEP category story externally. Our first step in building a brand for the PrEP category was to develop a positioning strategy that answers this question. What do we want young women's hearts to feel and minds to think about PrEP? Next slide, please. We created our brand positioning by following a four-phased approach. It started with the learn phase, where we pulled in all known evidence and insights and reviewed and assessed it with a broad range of stakeholders. In the build phase, we created an early positioning direction. We then iterated that direction alongside our audience. Finally, we validated it with young women themselves to ensure relevance and resonance. Throughout the process, we were led by a couple of very important principles. First, we leveraged an approach and framework from the private sector, adapting where needed to ensure applicability to the PrEP field and buy-in and alignment along the way. Most importantly, we involved young women in each phase of development, from the early concepts and review of insights straight through to validation. This was very much on purpose. They shaped the work and challenged us to let go of assumptions so that we created something with them instead of simply for them. We have a team of youth advisors, the MOSAIC Project's Next Gen Squad. They are all under the age of 30 and come from Eswatini, Kenya, Lesotho, Namibia, Nigeria, South Africa, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. They provided guidance, input, and advised us on young people's needs, preferences, and lived experiences. We met with them over the course of many workshops throughout the positioning process to ensure relevance and resonance with today's young people. This type of advisory group in a positioning process is part of the approach we adapted from the private sector. Thirdly, we analyzed insights through a gender transformative lens before being pulled through into any marketing strategy. We did this by examining gender roles, norms, and dynamics inherent in our insights, and by relaying relying on those insights that recognize the positive norms that support equality and promote the relative position of women, girls, and marginalized groups. Critical to our process was obtaining feedback from Ministry of Health representatives. We held workshops at key points in the process to understand and incorporate their perspectives. Furthermore, we always had HIV prevention and choice in mind, and not just a single product. We know awareness of PrEP is still low, and we need to market PrEP as a category that sits within the broader HIV prevention and SRH landscape. Lastly, we iterated and iterated and iterated so that our marketing and demand generation efforts line up with market introduction of new PrEP products. Next. Next slide, please. To build our positioning strategy, we adapted an approach from the private sector. We applied a framework that looks at insights garnered in 4 areas to eventually boil down to a key brand benefit, or the ultimate emotionally engaging focus of the brand. For us, this is the answer to the question, why should the PrEP category be the only option worth considering for AGYW? I'm now going to hand over to Mercy to take us through the process of developing our inputs into this framework.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'll be taking you through these slides. So in order to develop our inputs to the framework, we brought the direction we developed alongside stakeholders, including ministries of health representatives, country implementers, and Anil already noted that we also involved our next-gen squad to validate with other 121 young women in 3 different countries, that is in Kenya, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. Our participants came from urban, peri-urban, and rural settings, including PrEP users and non-PrEP users. And in South Africa and Kenya, we also included those who engaged in both formal and informal sex work, gender non-conforming individuals, and trans women who identified as adolescent girls and young women. Next slide, please. And what we found in the validations this is what led to our final positioning, the directions inputs. So for culture, we saw that PrEP supports young women in putting themselves first. This means that they are not seeking permission to live up to their potential, and they seek programs services, and products that believe in them and support them for who they already are. PrEP confirms the strength and power that young women already have and supports young women in putting themselves first. Under category, we saw that PrEP is self-care. To young women, this means having the confidence, the self-worth, and self-respect to care for themselves, their health, and their life. Self-care is about not letting HIV stand in their way, and young women know they are worth the effort it takes to take care of themselves. For consumer, we saw that PrEP provides peace of mind. PrEP is seen as an essential way to negate the anxieties of the momentary perception of HIV risk for young women. Like, for example, if someone has unprotected sex or when they feel sick. While not long-lasting, these moments occur frequently in young women's lives. And PrEP is like a form of therapy for some of the young women. Lastly, for products, PrEP choice puts young women in control. There are things that women often can't control when it comes to sex and PrEP offers them a measure of autonomy over their bodies. In the context of choice, there is an even greater measure of control. For the first time, find that young women can not only control whether to use PrEP, but also which of the methods to use. And now to our big reveal for the key brand benefits. Next slide. Our key brand benefits for the PrEP category shows PrEP's superpower for young women. It is that PrEP is a way for us to prioritize our physical health and mental well-being, to live a life uninterrupted by HIV. And PrEP shows that it affirms that self-love is strength. Next slide. We also developed an audience insights, which is a common thread that was found in each of the conversations we had through the positioning processes with our 121 EGYWs and the Next Gen Squad. It's not a direct quote from a single young woman, but it's an overarching idea that shaped our understanding of our audience. Next slide. We developed a narrative to tell the story of our positioning and to inspire those who read it to produce and refresh communication with our values in mind. You can find the full positioning narrative in our strategy brief. But essentially, this is not a story about HIV. This is a story about young women. Every day is a balancing act, juggling different things, different needs with limited resources. But instead of relinquishing our power, we are giving main character energy. We're standing on business. We have a strong sense of self and are determined to live a healthy life. Next slide. We learned some important truths about young women. Today, throughout this process, that 1, they are not passive. We are not passive bystanders in our own lives. That we are claiming our power and that we are very bold. That young women understand their daily realities, but also understand that we are inherently strong. That young women understand they need to prioritize themselves. They are brave. They know their worth. And they are not settling for anything that does not acknowledge and celebrate their sense of worth and their journey. And finally, most importantly, women today need to be empowered. We are already empowered. And I'll hand it back to Arnold to look at how we pull the position through into brand guidelines. Over to you.
Thank you, Mercy. We really believe that it is harder to ignore a story or message that feels like it was written just for you. That is why we created a set of PrEP category brand guidelines to live alongside the positioning strategy. This information-rich document helps our partners tell young women about the PrEP category in a compelling way that will move and inspire them to act. Next slide. What we're sharing on screen is some examples from the brand guideline. Inside these guidelines, you will find everything you need to know about the PrEP category story. It contains the building blocks to create clear, impactful, positive, and consistent communication. Consistent communication is, of course, the secret to getting her attention and making a lasting impression. On screen and over the next few slides, you will see excerpts, which include everything from creative assets like the logo, color palette, and font family, to guidance on messaging hierarchy, language, and application. Next slide, please. Some key elements of the guidelines include the PrEP is Choice logo, which was developed based on feedback from young women. It also includes the color palette with bold, bright colors that young women want to see. The specific blue here is what connected best with the PrEP category for them. You will also see a selection of fonts as well as an icon library that was created for the PrEP brand. Next slide. You will also see a design system hierarchy, guidance on photography, and bespoke illustrations created by a young woman herself. South African illustrator Nompumelelo Mdluli created a set of colorful, energetic, and engaging illustrations inspired by our brand guidelines. They depict a diverse group of AGYW in settings that they often find themselves in, at home, at school, university, socializing with friends, and more. Of course, the messaging, I choose me, which aligns with our final positioning direction and fits with PrEP's value proposition for young women, is also unpacked in the brand guidelines. I'll now turn back to Mercy to look at a few other components of the brand guidelines.
Thank you, Anels. So our brand guidelines outline our PrEP category commitments. As the PrEP category, we commit to communicating with young women in a way that resonates with them and respects their lived experiences. We don't sugarcoat the realities of taking PrEP. We understand the courage, effort, and commitment required to be a PrEP user. We show that we believe young women have what it takes. We affirm young women's strength, determination, and commitment. And we work towards creating broader awareness of PrEP. Next slide. And if PrEP was a person, so let's just think about it. If PrEP was a person, how would they behave? What would their character be? What would they sound like? PrEP is assured. It is confident, but it's never pushy. PrEP shows choice and it is not hard to sell. PrEP is respectful of all people's bodies, lifestyle, and choices. PrEP is powerful and strong. It owns its power and strength, but never acts arrogant or overbearing. PrEP is brave. It acts with courage, purpose, and conviction, even in the face of opposition. PrEP knows that bravery does not equal recklessness. And finally, PrEP is vibrant and exudes a positive and enthusiastic aura, that word. It feels dynamic and energetic. Lastly, when PrEP communicates, it is confident, it is trustworthy, it is open, and it is accessible. It is very inclusive and is very knowledgeable. PrEP shares trustworthy information in ways that are inclusive. We are always open to what young women want and how they express themselves. This includes using language, expressions, slang that they are familiar with, and keeping messages short and simple. Young women have places to be and things to do. So I'll hand you over to Anel to continue from here.
To wrap up, we really want everyone to be able to adapt and apply these brand guidelines. They are for everyone, and we'd like to work with you to understand the practical application of the guidelines. You'll hear more about such a workshop at the end of the webinar, but in the meantime, if you scan the QR code on screen, it'll take you to PrEP Watch, where you can download these brand guidelines. We really want to make PrEP famous and show more young women what they can make life-changing choices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anelda and Mercy. We are going to keep going rapidly, and so we'll turn it over to Sarah Piat from MTV's Staying Alive Foundation. Sarah, are you able to get off mute?
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
We can. There's a little bit of an echo, but I think if everyone else...
Is the echo gone now?
Yes, perfect. Go for
Excellent.
it.
Good.
Thanks.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for the MOSAIC team for organizing this fabulous webinar. So my name is Sarah Piot, and I'm the Managing Director of the MTV Staying Alive Foundation. Do we have the slides up here? Yes, great. So MTV Staying Alive was set up 25 years ago. We are an independent, not-for-profit funded by the likes of Unity, Gates, Packard, and others. And importantly, we're also supported by Paramount with the in-kind support of the MTV brand, the license to use it. And at the MTV Staying Alive Foundation, we are storytellers, stories that are powered by the truth of young people's experiences, stories that change and save lives. We are a media movement that produces game-changing content for young people, content that helps them make positive decisions about their health. The main driver in this is MTV Shuga, an award-winning campaign centered around a TV drama. And today I will talk to you a bit more about how we produce MTV Shuga, and also a little bit more about our work in South Africa and around PrEP. So next slide, please. So MTV Shuga was set up in 2009 in Kenya. And since then, we have gone to Nigeria, South Africa, Cote d'Ivoire, as well as India with the sister campaign called MTV Nished. And MTV Shuga is not just a TV series, which, you know, I know most people, that's what they know about it, but it's actually, when we go into country, it's a 360-degree campaign, because we go where young people are, and that could be, you know, radio, obviously digital, we produce graphic novels, and then very importantly, one of the key parts of it is the on-the-ground peer education program that uses MTV Shuga materials to drive health messaging deeper into local communities. Next slide. So why does our model work? We believe we're not a typical behavior change campaign the way we approach things. We use the MTV brand, which, you know, gives us immediately some, you know, attraction, but also, like, given our longevity now, we are trusted. We talk about things that, you know, not everybody wants to talk about. So we're very relatable, and, you know, we believe we're quite brave on some of the things that we do. And very importantly, we involve young people at every stage of the campaign. We tell their stories. And, you know, as I said before, we go where young people are. Very importantly as well, we give MTV Shuga and anything that we produce at MTV Staying Alive from the start. We've always produced everything rights cleared and give it away at no cost to any broadcaster or any organization, so that it's, you know, it's really the highest reach possible. Next slide. And so this is, you know, some of our, you know, the reach that we've had over the last, 15 years or so, which is, you know, ongoing. But as you can see, for example, in South Africa, the last 3 MTV Shuga series do reach, you know, close to 3 million weekly views on SABC1, which is, you know, where that mass media comes into. And in the last Shuga campaign, it was about 40% of those were the lowest economic households. Next slide, please. And, you know, at the heart of everything we do are the young people that we are trying to reach. So we start with formative research supported by technical information from our partners. And, you know, in South Africa, that included, you know, the likes of WITS, where, you know, we do rely on their, you know, knowledge, you know, of everything. And then also what is the landscape? What are the barriers to change for our target audience? And in parallel, we develop a holistic look at our audience. We collaborate with young people to craft relevant, impactful, and relatable narratives. And we recognize that context is everything. To be relatable, we need to reflect reality. So we ask the tough questions, open up the difficult conversations. We do that through, you know, small focus group discussions, you know, in different communities, because we understand that sexual reproductive health and rights messaging, to be impactful, needs to be told in the context of relationships, parental, teachers, peers, sexual, to reflect real life. And this ensures we create a narrative that is realistic, engaging, and nuanced. And, you know, we often ask also people to tell us, like, what would they like to see as stories in the next MTV Shuga campaign? And when we went to South Africa first, there was this young woman who told us, well, somebody's got to die. Nobody's, you know, ever died in MTV Shuga to date. And we're like, oh, okay, yeah. So how do you think? Should they die? Why do they die? And she said, like, I don't care how they die. That's your problem. You're the creators. But somebody's got to die, because in our lives, somebody always dies. So that's what happened, which we still gutted about, because we loved Solo, and but she's now, the actress who plays her is now the co-chair of our foundation. So it's all good. And, you know, so young people are truly involved in all stages of the production process, from being on set as well, to, you know, we do public auditions, and, you know, and I think that's what really just, you know, makes it a truly relatable. And in addition to this process of, research at the start, we have ongoing monitoring and learning. We have we've had the big independent evaluations done by the World Bank's DIME team, Johns Hopkins in Kenya, Tulane University in Nigeria, and most recently London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine in South Africa and Côte d'Ivoire. But we also continuously monitor, social media conversations with our audiences that allow us to feedback in real-time response. Next slide, please. So MTV Shuga Down South 2 and 3. So that's so in South Africa, we've produced 3 MTV Shuga's campaigns to date. And in 2018, we started a partnership with Untitled. And the goal of Down South 2 was to create demand for HIV self-testing and to raise awareness of, at the time, just, oral PrEP. And then one of the goals of Down South 2, which was launched last year, was to create awareness about the HIV prevention options, and in particular about long-acting PrEP. And it was a real challenge because obviously when we started, developing it all, we agreed with Unity to do this. It was back in 21 or 22, sometime in 22, thinking that long-acting PrEP would be in the market by the time that we would air. We realized when we were developing the storyline that would not be the case. So it was a real challenge to get it right. And because what we also don't want to do is, with the reach that we have, we do not want to create demand for a product that is not yet in market. So you'll see there is a clip in a bit that I'll show you that at least tackles it, but it makes it very clear that it's not yet there. But that's been one of the challenges really of this last campaign. As I mentioned, we have a partnership with WITS, which has been really invaluable. And I know Ilmari will mention it as well in her presentation, but they're also Unitaid grantees, so it makes a lot of sense. And in the past year, as part of Down South 3, we referred people to the chatbot they created, Sister Onati. And the data are really encouraging. In July and August, when Down South 3 was launched, and so on air and on YouTube, there was a big uptake of the chatbot. And in July, about 50% of the users, I believe, came through MTV Shuga. In August, about 40%. The series still has to air on SABC, so we expect another surge at some point this year when they confirm when they will air it. But it's and I think it's great that these partnerships are needed because we don't need to reinvent anything, and it's and it's there and it's local and people trust it. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, so London School evaluated Down South 2, and they looked in particular at the HIV self-testing and PrEP. It was a mixed method evaluation, an online survey, which was supposed to be in person, but they started in March 2020. So then we had to pivot. It became an online survey. And out of that, so 43% had engaged with MTV Shuga, and 24% with Down South 2 specifically. And the results, again, really encouraging. So all those who engage with MTV Shuga were likely to be more aware of HIV self-testing and PrEP, more likely to know their HIV status. And it also, the qualitative insights, which was a mix of some focus groups discussions, but also some viewing sessions with in small groups where people then reported and filmed themselves. And it was, there was definitely an increased awareness, confidence and motivation to use HIV self-testing and PrEP, but less influence on service access, which is one of the barriers, obviously, that we all know are there, but, is something we can do less about. And some of the quotes here that I have also from the qualitative is, one young woman said, before seeing the show, PrEP was just something she saw in the books. I didn't know was actually out there. And then a young male who said, now that I have more information about PrEP, it will help me when I meet someone. I will know what I need to do and know how PrEP will help me. So, and I think that's what, in essence, what MTV Shuga wants to, we want to portray real life situations and also just, prepare people for when they will find themselves in this situation, that they know where to go, that they know the options available, which, some people may not need the options today, but they may need them, in 2 months' time. So the next slide is a clip of MTV Shuga Down South 3, where a young woman called Nono goes to the clinic. After she's found out that her boyfriend is likely to be cheating on her, and she has already looked up some PrEP online, and now goes to talk to the nurse. Can we play the clip, please?
Hi. Come in, sir. I came here for PrEP, the injectable one.
The one where you take 2 injections a month apart, and then you come back to us every 8 weeks.
That's the one I'm looking for, but I can't find it anywhere. That's why I'm here.
I see you've been doing your homework. And every day, you're living in the future.
What do you mean? I thought I could choose between the injectable, the pills, and the vaginal ring.
The thing is, they're not available in Zanzi right now. Well, they will be available soon. At least you can still protect yourself from HIV by taking your daily PrEP pills consistently. Then as soon as the vaginal ring and the injection are available, then you can just switch.
Can I get the pills now?
Then we'll need to start with the HIV test.
But I did a self-test like last week.
I understand, but before I can initiate PrEP, I need to take the test myself.
Okay, that's fine. Ngiyabonga kakhulu.
Thank you. So, we always also, want to show the good and the bad in terms of the, healthcare staff. And, we know that a lot of clinics are not youth friendly enough, that they, they don't treat young people with the respect they deserve. But we also want to obviously encourage people to go, and we want to show that it is possible, as, to have youth-friendly services, and that it's not that hard if you want. Then the next clip is it's not a clip, it's a PSA, and it's with a character called the PrEP Fairy. We made actually 2 PSAs, one on oral PrEP and the other on the ring. The one for the ring we have kept back because, as I mentioned before, this was aired first in at the end of November, beginning of December last year. And given that the ring is not enough available yet, we will keep it back, but hopefully we'll release it at some point later this year, or even next year to, when really we feel it's a responsible thing to do. So yeah, please play the clip.
I am the fairy PrEP mother. Yes, fairies do exist, but the mission is simple: to help my lovelies have safe sex. It's nice there. Gushushu, it's very warm where you are. Are we coming prepared? Well, I have something for a little extra PrEP. A pill a day keeps the sexy safe.
But who wants to gunya a pill every day?
The stallion that wants to clove every day.
Let's go.
You're welcome. For more information about PrEP and HIV prevention, check out my girl, Sister Onati, at myprep.co.za.
Thank you. I'll hand it over back to Emily.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was a fantastic presentation, and we've seen lots of questions coming into the chat. I'm going to turn it right over to Elmarie to talk about South African implementation, and we may have a bit of a truncated Q&A at the end, but we will make sure to follow up on all questions. So please continue to put them into the chat. Over to you, Elmarie.
And go. Thank you, Emily. it is my pleasure to tell you more about starting a brand for a new HIV prevention product in South Africa. More about the needs, the considerations, and the friendships and partnerships that were made along the way. Next slide. On 1 June 2016, the National Department of Health, in collaboration with several role players and implementing parties, commenced with a phased approach of oral PrEP provision in selected sites across South Africa. Our story therefore starts in 2016, but is still going strong in 2024. And we need to talk about all the beautiful moments in between that were made by visionary donors and partners who understood the task to create demand when product is available, while still thinking about what would be catalytic to inform an inventional national rollout. Next. Our story is about more than just branding and IEC materials and marketing assets. It's also about partnerships that made our world go round. We must acknowledge the role of incredible projects and the donors who believe as passionately as we do. The National Department of Health that has driven PrEP implementation and national rollout in South Africa, and the support of USAID through PEPFAR and UnitAid respectively, has made this journey a joy. Next. Evidence-informed brand and demand generation campaign strategy is key to effective implementation of demand generation for PrEP. But let's have a look at what that means. Next. For MOSAIC, we took a deeper look at the evidence to inform the process for creating a brand for the PrEP category. We conducted an oral PrEP demand creation materials landscaping to help us understand context, find best practices, and remaining gaps. We spoke to several experts and implementers in the field and really dug into previous research and insights. We also knew that if we wanted to go far, we would have to go together. We engaged a broad set of stakeholders, including our ministries of health, advocates and activists, donors and local stakeholders. And we are big believers in nothing for us without us. And to this extent, we not only worked alongside MOSAIC's Next Gen Squad in developing our brand, we also validated it with 121 young women from different regions in South Africa. Next slide. But long before PrEP was choice, Project PrEP, funded by UnitAid, needed an approach to reach adolescent girls and young women in public healthcare settings on a national scale. Building on the foundation of We Are the Generation, creative, developed under options, Project PrEP set about developing and implementing a holistic yet dynamic demand creation strategy to reach girls and young women and the influencers in their lives with various tactics delivered across different channels. Project PrEP developed the ATAR model to guide the development of the strategy, a response hierarchy model taking into account internal and external factors and approaching demand creation from a perspective of building credibility and trust with all stakeholders, actively pursuing meaningful youth engagement and investing in a holistic approach that is aligned to the life circumstances of our girls and young women. From the onset, Project PrEP and UnitAid knew that reaching girls and young women with unique and resonant messaging and communication tactics through channels that appeal to them and motivate action requires ongoing input and review from similarly diverse young people. Next. The ATAR model guides strategic development to take into consideration the cognitive, affective, and behavior stages of not just girls and young women, but also those around them who influence their lives. Partners and friends, parents and caregivers, teachers, political and religious leaders, and traditional and tribal councils. At every stage, a girl or young woman is reached by the project, but must also feel that she can reach out to a trusted friend, family, or community member, either for information or support. To this extent, the model is continuously influenced by community engagement, meaningful youth engagement, and activating community members as support agents for girls and young women to build neighborhoods, towns, cities, and a country where HIV prevention is normalized and even celebrated. Next. Project PrEP still believes in the vision of UnitAid to do work that will act as a catalyst for informing national rollout. As such, we started at the community level, engaging key influencers in the lives of girls and young women, including girls and young women themselves. We branched out to reach as many as possible in the project's catchment areas. We moved to a specific focus on girls and young women in these settings and were able to learn, build, adapt, and course correct where needed before embarking on a journey to reach as many girls and young women and the people that form part of their lives in South Africa. Next. Following an evidence-informed approach allowed Project PrEP to grow and achieve incredible results. In any given month, the project on average engages, not reaches, engages more than 50,000 potentially inclusive audience members. Next. Ultimately, you need much to engage men. Different tactics executed across different channels, from social media collabs to graffiti events, national photo shoots to mobile clinics providing services where it's truly needed. The Project PrEP demand creation strategy shows a firm belief that partnering and applying a nimble approach allows for engagement that matters. Next. This incredible reach and engagement is, of course, a result of different partners playing together. In the beginning, Options and Project PrEP were quick to make friends, the kind of friendship where we knew we could count on each other no matter what. Project PrEP has also been going steady with a vibrant MTV Shuga down south piece, and there is a budding new romance between MOSAIC and Project PrEP. Cross-collaboration and promotion, co-creation and support has ensured that budgets are used optimally to reach our audience with demand generation that delivers impact and is relevant and resonant with girls and young women. Next. And doing it together has made it extra sweet. Not just partnerships with other implementers and donors, but also meaningful partnerships with our audience. This slide is a snapshot of how our efforts in South Africa have led to a movement of young people who are proud of playing their part in normalizing HIV prevention. From human-centered design workshops to user-generated content, and girls and young women proud to announce their PrEP use on social media. We keep going strong, and we're especially excited about implementing MOSAIC's PrEP is Choice campaign, where we intend to work with young women to develop high-quality content of their own to keep the momentum going. Next. The year is 2024, and what we've all been waiting for is finally on the horizon. PrEP is choice. Our job is not done, and once again, we need to align and ensure that we develop demand generation that is responsive, but also responsible. Our efforts must align with product introduction timelines. We cannot create demand where there isn't supply yet, but we also cannot miss any opportunities. We need to prime the market and establish a consistent presence in the minds of our target audience. The informed choice to be made is up to our clients, and as such, we have a responsibility to focus our attention on the product category as a whole. Marketing PrEP as a category will have most impact before wider availability. we're investing in a nimble-phased approach to campaign implementation, starting in areas where choice of product is available first. This approach allows us to have maximum impact where needed. Finally, we're big believers in meeting our audiences where they are. In South Africa, we are doing a soft launch of the campaign at sites in Welkom in the Free State province. Next. This launch turns more traditional campaign activities on their head and includes components that meet young women where they are today, aiming to actually appeal to our Gen Z audience, bring them in and speak in their language. The PrEP Ketathon, or Choose-a-thon, celebrates PrEP choice in South Africa and is the official soft launch of the PrEP Choice campaign, inspired by the MOSAIC PrEP category, positioning key brand benefits that PrEP is a way for young women to prioritize their physical health and mental well-being, affirming that self-love is strength. Celebrating PrEP choice, the event highlights the opportunity for girls and young women to choose a PrEP or HIV prevention method that works for them. To highlight the concept of freedom of choice, the event will be structured in such a manner that everything is a choice. Choose your favorite song, choose your drink, your snack, your t-shirt, and even your selfie frame. Everything will be a choice. Next. Here's a quick sneak peek into celebrating choice. Again, you can choose the color of your t-shirt and your favorite message on the t-shirt. You can choose your goodie bag, enter your choice for future campaign slogans into a competition, and even choose which loo you want to go to. Yes, choice is everything. Next. But as always, we know we can't achieve our goals if we don't do things together. We have a unique opportunity to drive demand for PrEP now. While most of us may have limited budgets for demand generation, these budgets become incredible when we pool resources and support each other. We simply have to, now more than ever, leverage partnerships, support our ministries of health, and be strategic, evidence-led, and user-centric. MOSAIC and Project PrEP are invested in working with all implementing partners in South Africa in support of our National Department of Health. We share resources, ideas, and support. Please make a connection today and let's do this together. Thank you, and back over to Emily.
Thank you, Elmarie, so much. And thanks to all our speakers today. We are running a little tight on time, but we do have time, I think I will save maybe for 1 or 2 questions. Casey, I don't know if you want to come on and direct just 1 or 2 to our panelists, and then of course we can follow up after the fact. Please feel free to reach out to any of us speaking today, and I think we will also send a follow-up email addressing some of the other questions. Over to you, Casey.
Yes, thank you, Emily. And while I ask this question, it would be great if the presenters could just drop their email addresses or contact information into the chat in case folks would like to learn more. I saw several questions come through about cost of implementing these interventions, and then we have a couple of moments to speak to that. So I don't know if that's something Sarah or Elmarie you could speak to.
Okay. Casey, can you just repeat the question for me as I can't see?
Sure. We have some questions in the chat just about cost, and people are wondering about budget to roll out these campaigns.
Right. So, I mean, that's a really difficult question because it's how long is a piece of string? And so at the end of the day, you need to look at your budget. You need to have a strategic approach and then decide, all right, where is my spend going to be best? So if you have a fantastically big budget, you can definitely go on national radio. You can create massive awareness. But if you have a smaller budget, then perhaps it's better to consider to partner with a community radio station who's often a lot cheaper. You can also look at partnering with your community-based partners, such as community-based organizations. You can work with them, and it can be a mutually beneficial relationship. So I think I'm very open if people want to sort of chat with us, to respond to them on email on these questions. But just to also highlight, I'm a big fan of social media. By spending just a little bit of money, you can definitely target and boost your post to reach the people in the area that you want to reach. So there's different options depending on what your budget is. Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Elmarie. And I think, I mean, MTV Shuga is not it's high quality. We produce, it's a big production, but which is why we do all the 360, why we partner with people. It's, and the longevity of it is quite, it's not just a short campaign. So it's quite hard to define, but I think, and I want to commend again Unitaid as well for having, they know that investing in this demand creation is so important because, it's all well and good to have fantastic products, but if nobody knows about them or nobody knows how to use them. So I think it's, we need to invest in this.
Thank you so much. And I think, unfortunately, we are out of time, but please continue to check your inboxes because we will always send a follow-up mailer, which will include the recording of the webinar, as well as some key points and takeaways and helpful links. And please remember to sign up for our mailing list. If you got this link elsewhere, I will drop that link into the chat. And stay tuned for our next webinar coming next quarter. Thank you so much.